Hi, I'm Carmen Alana Tibbets. Joining me today in the Agosia Art Studio is this little hummingbird, one of the series that you've been watching me work on for quite a while now. And this guy has something special, and that's a collar on his jacket. And the subject of today's video is how to make collars and sleeves and how I deal with them when I'm making my clothing. So let's get started. Before I show you how I make collars and sleeves, I'm going to show you how a traditionally sewn sort of one-piece jacket might be sewn for a doll. And in this case, I've made a sample out of muslin, and it's just pinned together at all of the major seams. So this pattern for the front and the back is the same as the sleeveless jacket pattern that I showed in previous videos. And in this case, I added a sleeve. So to draft this pattern, I placed some muslin onto the arm, traced around, cut it out, and did all of that. And then this is actually stitched up at the top of the sleeve. And for the sides, I just sort of pinned that in place. And then I just sewed it and pinned everything on here just so that you could see what this would look like. And from the front, it doesn't look very bad. From the back, it looks fine too, no problem here. But the difficulty that occurs is if your doll is jointed and you want movement in your doll. In human-sized clothing, we have enough room in the seams so that if you move your arm, there's enough wearing ease built into that seam so that you don't get the entire back or front of your jacket moving along with the sleeve. But in a doll, because it's so much smaller, you don't have that ease. So if your doll is just going to stand there, it's not going to be a problem. But if you're going to be in a situation where you want your doll to move, probably every time you move a sleeve, some portion of the garment is going to move with that sleeve. So some people just live with that and they say, okay, well, I'm just going to keep my doll like this. It's going to be posed. It's not going to be moving. I don't care. And I'm just going to go ahead and sew this the way I would a normal jacket, in which case, you know, you would have all your pieces, you'd have your tiny little seam allowances, and you could do that. But I don't do that. What do I do instead? Now here I have a little guy, and he's wearing his semi-finished jacket. This is the sleeveless jacket, which is what he's going to keep, but we're going to use him for demo to make a sleeve. And I've just pinned the shoulders and the sides together just so that you can see what the little jacket would fit like. And as you've seen before, I line my garments, and when I'm drafting the pattern, I try to line up the edge of the armhole so that it sort of hugs the back and the front of the arm. And that's important if you want to add a sleeve. You may want to add a little bit extra on your pattern so that the edge of the sleeveless jacket, which is going to have sleeves in the next step, is actually tucked inside of that arm and torso joint. So if you want to add a sleeve, you would go ahead and make the front and back of the jacket, sew it all together as if it was going to be sleeveless, and you're going to make your sleeve separately. And so in this case, I have a little sample sleeve. This is very simplified, but you would draft your pattern the way I showed you in a previous video with a piece of muslin, tucking and sort of cutting and marking and doing all of that. And then what you're going to do is you're going to sew your sleeve. If you want to line it, you can, and I showed you how to do that in a previous video. If you're not going to line it, you could just go ahead and hem the bottom and do whatever you're going to do there, and then sew your side seam and turn it so that it's right side out. And that's not going to show, so you don't have to be particularly neat about that. And then you're going to have your finished sleeve, and it'll be sewn up here. I guess I should go ahead and pin that. That's what I put these pins here for. And then what you're going to do by hand is these very, very large basting stitches along the top curve of that sleeve. So everything up until this point has been done by machine. I guess you could sew it by hand if you wanted to. But I find that it's easier to do all of these basting stitches, because I'm doing really big ones, by hand, and I've used a good buttonhole twist here. So then you have your little doll. He's wearing his jacket, and you're going to go ahead and put your sleeve, and yours is going to be finished. You just go ahead and put it on, and then you have all of these stitches there, and you're just going to pull, and it's going to gather the sleeve, and you want to sort of pinch and prod, and you're pulling all of that extra fabric down inside between the torso and the arm. And of course, I have these hanging loops for my dolls. You may not have that sort of thing. I have this as a display option. And so then you just pull that tight, and so all of that fabric is going to be down inside by the joint. And if you've made your jacket so that the edge of the armhole touches the arm, when your sleeve is drawn up, then those two fabrics will be touching each other, and it will look like it's pretty much a one-piece garment. So at this point, I have my extra thread here. I would just go ahead and do a little knot and bury the knot and trim the extra thread. And so now, of course, you would do a better job fitting, but now I have a little sleeve on my guy, and the arm can move completely freely, and you're not going to have any distortion from the front or the back of the jacket. So I think this is a lot easier than doing a sleeve that is sewn to the jacket and then everything stitched in place, and I just think that's kind of a pain. You also have the option to embellish the sleeve in any way that you want before it's all put together, and then you can attach that separately. And of course, in a case like this, you could make a sleeveless jacket, finish it, live with it for a while, and say, you know what, I want to add sleeves later, and you can always do that. So I think that's a pretty easy option, and the nice thing about doing this kind of sleeve is that you can do all kinds of fun things with the sleeve. So this is kind of a basic sleeve pattern. It's very similar to what you would see for a normal human clothing sleeve, but you can also alter that pattern to get particular effects. And this is a sleeve that I often use for a bird to give sort of a wing-like look. So this is the underarm, and then this is the shoulder cap, and so my sleeve is actually open in the front to give kind of a wing-like effect. And so I have a sample here of a figure in process. This is an owl, and here's the sleeve, and this is actually suede, and I've gathered it a little bit. I haven't done the final stitching here, but you can see it's left open in the front, and it's kind of a little bit bigger, and I like that. One of the benefits of doing a sleeve like this is you can use leather very easily, and you can just sort of stitch things together however you want. And I find that it's easier to do the different shapes with a sleeve that's put together first and then attached later than if you were going to do all kinds of different shapes and then sew all of that to the finished jacket. I think that would just be a little bit trickier. So this is much simpler. So that's how I do sleeves. Pretty straightforward and easy. Now what about collars and lapels? Well, here, let's take a look at this guy. This is an acorn woodpecker. And this jacket is just a variation of my usual sleeveless jacket. And in this case, I've just made lapel extensions. So if we have sort of the basic pattern for this, it would look something like that. And of course, I can't find the pattern now that I used for this guy, but it would be something like this, and you can see that I just put this wing-like extension, and then with the lining, so it's lined with the yellow silk, when you fold it back, you get this big lapel. So I will often do just the lapels or just a collar. I rarely do both because I don't know, I just don't like to do lots of things at once. So this is very easy because you've just altered the basic pattern. If you wanted to do sort of like a high turtleneck collar, let's take a look at this guy here. He's wearing his sleeve. And you wanted to do something kind of like a military look. What I would do in that case is I would just play around with making a pattern, and in this case I would not use muslin. I would use a piece of cardboard, and this is my usual go-to, which is cereal box cardboard. And you can just sort of cut out a shape and see what works. So before shooting this video, I just cut this out, and you can see that the angle is wrong here. It's going the wrong way on the neck. and it's a little bit too short, so it's always a case of trial and error. So I played around with it a little bit more, and it looks like this is going to be what I want for this guy. So this would then be the pattern for my collar, and I would make this the way I would make any other garment piece. So it would be lined, so I would have my two fabrics, place right sides together, trace around, sew, turn it out, press, do all of that. And then I would have my collar. And I didn't do that in this case. I'm just using a piece of felt because it has kind of a similar feel to this jacket. So in this case, I have a separate item that I am then going to stitch right on top of the finished jacket. So this is different from the sleeve, where I'm making this as its own piece and it stands alone, and I could take this off and it's not attached to the jacket or anything like that. The collar is going to be stitched to the jacket. And so in this case, you can see that if I made this collar, I'm happy with the way this looks, the way it fits next to the head. And so it's not going to fit right up on the edge of the garment, which is something that a lot of people might be tempted to do. But, well, you can do that, but you're going to cause yourself a lot of agony trying to get everything to fit perfectly. So what I'm going to tell you is don't even worry about that. You're just going to go ahead and make it so that it fits and it looks good, pin it in place, and then you're just going to stitch it by hand all the way around. So yes, that means that you made all of these edges and they're never going to show and they're perfect, and no one's ever going to know what that looks like, and you have all of this extra up here, but who cares? It doesn't matter. Nobody's ever going to see that. So just go ahead and do it the easier way. This looks good. It's going to be fine. You can sew it on. You can have it closed with some little beads or some little buttons or something like that. Just worry about getting the final shape that you want and hand stitching it on so that it looks the way that you want it to look. So that, to me, is the easiest way to do collars and sleeves. They're not sewn on as part of the jacket or the shirt. They are separate entities that are added later, and usually they just sort of stand alone. So I hope that helps you in your clothing journey and your progression with your doll art. So let me know if that helps you at all when you're sewing for your dolls, and if you've learned a new sewing technique today. And thanks for stopping by. Bye-bye.